Me and my girlfriend were cleaning my gun, and we were trading it back and forth, and I didn't know it was loaded, and I shot her. No! I need an ambulance right now, please.
All right, ma'am, we're getting help on the way, okay?
Please, please. Oh my God, no! No!
Ma'am, I need you to take a deep breath. We're getting help on the way.
I'm gonna... No, please! God damn it, I'm lost! No!
An accident that doesn't sound like an accident. Prosecutors say a former deputy pulled the trigger and his girlfriend ended up dead, shot between the eyes. Was it careless? Was it reckless? Or was it murder? This is On the Record. I'm your host, Cody Thomas, and today, the trial of Leslie Boileau, an ex-Florida deputy accused of killing 25-year-old Paulina Wright. He called it a tragic mistake, but prosecutors called it manslaughter. Let's run it back.
Sloppy. That's how a Florida sheriff's deputy described the alcohol-fueled gun training session that ended his girlfriend's life on September 19, 2024. Ocala police were called to his home where they found 25-year-old Paulina Wright dead from a single shot right between the eyes. Investigators say 32-year-old Leslie Boileau, a Marion County deputy, told them it was an accidental discharge, but he also said that he and Wright had 3 margaritas each at dinner before deciding to clean 2 firearms when they returned home. Boileau says that Wright begged him to train her to use the weapons, so he allowed her to dry fire a Glock while pointing it at him. That's when he attempted to dry fire an AR-style pistol rifle at her. He said he'd forgotten that he'd loaded the magazine. Deputy Boileau, who admitted to investigators that the shooting looked really bad, was fired from his job a month later and charged with manslaughter. Paulina Wright's family say that she loved music and comedy shows and was always making people laugh. She'd worked in accounting and bookkeeping and was getting ready to go back to school to be an optometrist tech.
Day 1, the state came out swinging. They said Boileau knew better. He's trained, he's experienced, yet he still pulled the trigger. But the defense, margaritas and gun cleaning. Clearly a bad combination that ended in tragedy.
Me and my girlfriend were cleaning guns, and I didn't know it was loaded, and I shot her. That's what that man, the defendant, told the 911 operator when he called in to report the shooting. I was cleaning the guns. We were pointing them at each other. She said, "I want you to teach me how to use them." We were pointing them at each other, and mine went off. That's what he told one of the first responding officers who arrived on the scene after that officer walked into the residence and saw Paulina Wright seated at a dining room table in a chair with a gunshot wound to the center of her forehead. I go to dry fire the rifle. I dry fired it the first time, and the second time it went off. After I dry fired it the first time, I reset the trigger, which loaded around in the chamber. I forgot the magazine was in when I fired the second time. That's what the defendant told Detective Kyle Kern of the Ocala Police Department during a formal interview about how he, assuming a firearm was unloaded, pointed at the victim and pulled the trigger. And that intentional act, that decision to pull the trigger, caused a projectile to travel down the barrel of a rifle, strike the victim in the forehead, travel through her brain, exit the back of her skull, and lodge itself in the kitchen wall directly behind her head. At the end of this case, ladies and gentlemen, the evidence will show that the defendant was armed with an AR-style rifle, that he pointed it at the victim's forehead and intentionally pulled the trigger. That caused the death of Paulina Wright. The evidence is going to show that the defendant broke the number 1 rule of fire safety: never point a gun at somebody unless you're going to use it. At the end of this case, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to ask you to find the defendant guilty of manslaughter. And we're going to ask you to do that because that's what the evidence will have proven beyond any reasonable doubt. And that's what the law will require. Thank you so much for your time.
What the 911 operator actually heard first is I just had an accidental discharge. And the operator wasn't sure exactly what the caller said. And he said, accidental discharge, in a very stressed, frantic voice. Those were Dale Boileau's first words to the 911 operator while holding Paulina, his girlfriend of 2 years, seconds after he accidentally shot her. The charge, the entire case, is based on the circumstances surrounding how Paulina Wright was shot. And the evidence in this case will make it fairly clear that the only reason that the law enforcement officers who investigated this case and the prosecutors who filed it would know anything at all about what happened is because Dale told. Nothing you will see that Dale told them was inconsistent with the evidence they found. And the evidence will show that he consistently told them that it was an accident. You are not going to know exactly how Paulina Wright was shot. You're not. There's nothing in the evidence they're going to present that's going to answer that question because they didn't ask. After they've finished and I've had a chance to present evidence and I rest my case and sit down, you're going to know exactly what happened at the moment Paulina Wright was killed. Exactly how this horrible, tragic accident actually happened. An accident that has destroyed 2 families and that has haunted Dale Boileau since it happened.
Then came the forensics. A bullet hole in the wall, but no soot and no stippling. Translation, that shot didn't come from up close. The medical examiner sealed it. Paulina Wright was shot square between the eyes. And from the jump, the jury was stuck on one question. Could this really have been an accident? Now, day 2, Boileau himself, he walked them through his version. Dinner, drinks, cleaning, rifles. He said Paulina was curious. He showed her a handgun, then picked up a rifle. And here's the pivot.
So when you had put the rifle down on the table, there was no bullet in the chamber.
Correct.
And it had a full magazine.
I don't keep, the magazine can hold 30 rounds. I don't
So
keep
you're 5 short.
Yeah, I don't keep it fully loaded.
And that's to preserve the spring in
Yes.
the magazine?
Yeah,
Okay. So you had 25 rounds in it.
yes.
All right. And when you picked it back up, while she's doing the dry fire thing with the handgun, how did you hold it?
I picked it up while watching the TV and I was holding it like this.
Stand up, make sure all the
I was holding it like
see it.
this.
So you were kind of cradled.
Yeah.
So the magazine was down. Okay. And what was your intention? What were you going to do with it?
I was trying.
What is this function test you're talking about?
So when you disassemble a rifle and you put it back together, you have to do a function test to ensure that you put it back together correctly. If you didn't put it back together correctly, it's not going to fire the next time you need it to fire.
All right. And describe or explain the steps in this function test.
The bolt's forward, obviously. You have to pull the trigger and hold the trigger and then charge it. Release the trigger and pull the trigger again. And you're listening for the hammer to drop on the firearm to make sure you assembled it correctly. Because if you did not assemble it correctly, it's not going to make that click sound.
So you got it cradled in your arms,
Yeah,
barrel off to your left.
yeah,
Okay. You're sitting across the table,
yeah.
and you're kind of watching TV. And you said you're listening for a clip. So did you either put your head down to the rifle or bring the rifle up to your head?
Both. Like, it was, because I was listening more so for a sound. And you can't really see what you're looking for type of deal. It's internal.
Okay. So you have to listen for it.
Yeah.
When you pulled the trigger the first time, what happened?
What was supposed to happen, you heard a click.
And then when you charged it and pulled the trigger the second time,
That's when it went off.
I know you know now where the barrel is pointing. Were you looking at Paulina when you were doing that?
No, I was looking at the TV.
What did you do after you realized she was hit?
Called 911.
Okay. Did you go to her?
I did.
Now, what position did she start in? I mean, she's hit. Did she fall back, fall forward?
She was just sitting in the chair.
And did you maintain that position until the officers arrived?
Yeah.
So you were kind of cradling her head?
I didn't know what else to do.
Okay. Were you panicked at that point?
Yeah, I was freaking out.
Paulina is dead because you ended up pointing the barrel at her.
Yeah.
But you didn't aim it at her.
No.
Did you ever aim it at her? So when you told the officers we were pointing the guns at each other, I mean, what did that mean when it came out of your mouth?
I was coming to terms with what happened. Obviously, pointing guns at each other. That's how this probably happened.
Now, he claimed he thought the rifle was empty. He wasn't even looking at her. He was watching TV. But prosecutors drove it home. This was a former deputy. He knew the rules, he knew guns, and he admitted it himself.
You didn't drop the gun. You didn't drop the gun.
No.
You didn't misplace the gun or anything like that.
No,
In fact, when the gun went off, it was in your hands.
it was.
And when the gun went off, you were the one who pulled the trigger.
I was.
And when the gun went off, you were the one who intended to pull the trigger at that point in time.
Yes.
One word, yes, could have sealed his fate. Closing arguments. The state kept it simple. He didn't mean to kill, but he did the one thing you never do. He pointed a rifle at another human being and he pulled the trigger.
Intentional acts with unintended results. Quite simply put, that's why we're here. That's manslaughter. This isn't a case where we're alleging or we're going to prove to you that Leslie Dale Boileau Jr. intended to kill Paulina Wright, thought about killing Paulina Wright, or killed her out of hatred, ill will, spite, or bad intent. However, what we did tell you we were going to prove, and what we did prove throughout yesterday and today, is that the defendant intentionally committed actions that led to the death of Paulina Wright.
The defense called it a horrible mistake. They said detectives twisted his panicked words. They said negligence is not criminal.
But all they seemed to hear was we were pointing the guns at each other. A statement made minutes after the worst moment in his life, covered in his girlfriend's blood, while his head is swirling between grief, anger at himself. The pointing at each other thing should have died a quick death right there. Because he explained, no, that's not what we were doing. He has never, ever said, We were pointing guns like this, aiming at each other. There is absolutely no evidence that that ever happened. The best I can get is, yes, he meant to pull the trigger to finish his function test. He didn't intend for it to go off. He didn't intend for it to have been steered in the direction of Paulina because he had turned and was looking at the television. He didn't intend any of that. But yes, he pulled the trigger. But you don't get to manslaughter that way.
The state fired back, straight shot, first statements, and his training. This was no mistake.
What does make sense is when you take his initial statements, when he's the most excited, when he hasn't had time to actually think about the potential consequences, and is more focused on actually getting aid for Paulina Wright, and says what actually happened of we were pointing guns at each other and mine went off. That we were doing dry fire exercises. Or what we heard him tell Detective or Sergeant Cerulli, we were around with the guns. That's not somebody who's just gotten a little too confident or somebody who believes in their ability. That's somebody who got sloppy, as he said. That's somebody who knew the risk, didn't care, and did what he did anyways that evening. What happened that night was completely avoidable. And when something is that avoidable by all of those steps that the defendant decided to take and not stop at, is what makes it culpably negligent. And when it's culpably negligent, it's manslaughter.
Now the jury deliberated. They asked for measurements, compared heights, and then came back with the decision.
Verdict, we the jury find as follows as the defendant in this case. The defendant is guilty of manslaughter. Did the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt that during the commission of the offense, the defendant personally carried, displayed, used, threatened to use, or attempted to use a firearm? Yes. So say we all, day this first day of October 2025.
Verdicts, guilty. Leslie Boileau now faces 15 to 30 years behind bars, and the sentencing hearing is set for October 14th. The jury heard the call, they saw the forensics, they listened to his words, and they decided this wasn't an accident. This was a crime. And with that, I'm Cody Thomas. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, stay informed, and I'll see you next time when we're back on The Record.